Nevada. And we are here in the Moapa Valley. And quite a dramatic valley this is. Very special place here. Yeah, and there's some ruins. There's some ruins right up there that we're going to check out. So there was a very famous family. Well, not really known. They were famous here at the time. The Huntsman family. Emeline Huntsman. The Lady of the Lantern. Yeah, so the railroad here back then came through and still comes through. It's this very unique enclave here, this beautiful area. You come out through the desert, and there's mountains and dry, nothing. And then all of a sudden you come into this enclave, as I call it, of green, and it's quite dramatic. And there's water here and planting, and yeah, this was a good spot to be back then. So we go back to let's go all the way back to 350 BC. This was an area that was first, well, archaeologists can only trace back and find that it was the ancestral Puebloan peoples that occupied this area, some referred to as the Anasazi, and then the Paiute maybe merged from or came in. Anyway, it all became Paiutes, the basket makers, and the farmers. And still today even, there's a lot of farming that they do, and they're still here. But at this place, it's quiet. There's nobody here. Now, you go back to the 1800s. We're going to go back to 1827. And Jedediah Smith was here. Yeah. Jedediah Smith. He came through here. Emeline was born actually in St. Joseph, Missouri, just north of Kansas City. She was born on May 10th, 1855. She's the daughter of William and Dinah Davies. Now, her father, William, died early, so Dinah would remarry a man named William Ellis Jones. He was a school teacher in Hebron, Utah. Now, Dinah had come from a very wealthy family. She had graduated from medical school, and she was a doctor. She was a licensed doctor. And that was hard to find, especially when you come out here. But back then, they had children. Emeline was born, as I mentioned. She would marry a man named David Orrin Huntsman, get the last name Huntsman, 1871. They had their first child, a son named James William. And they'd go on to have 10 children. Sadly, losing one child, Tacey Paralee, 1 year of age. In 1875, they moved to Gunlock, Utah, and 3 years later, 1878, they were on the move again. Bunkerville, Nevada, getting close here. 1881 to St. Thomas, Nevada. And they come here, 1891. It was the Cane Springs Ranch, this area right here. 160-acre ranch, a large orchard. Yeah, and that's when the Union Pacific Railroad came in. 1905. Like I said, they cut in right through here. Maybe the train will come while we're here. Who knows? They are passing through. Well, the Huntsman Ranch became known for Emeline. because she was, well, she was known for her cooking. And of course, her mom had passed down all the medical skills. So she was pretty much the doctor and midwife for this area. And everybody relied on her, all the settlers. Of course, it was sparsely populated, and the tribespeople too. So she became quite well known. She was somewhat of a, I guess, a heroine here. She was. And the railroad really supported her. The railroad men would say they would ride the line at night. And as I came in here, it's not easy to get back here. We're an hour and a half-ish from Las Vegas, northeast. You've got to come about 15 miles in. Glendale, Moapa, there's Overton, but you got to come in this back area to get to this special little place which you can come and visit. And she came here, she was here doing her thing. And what I want to say is, when I was coming in the valley, you look out and you can just imagine, because they would describe Emeline as, and that's how she got her name, Lady of the Lantern, because they would see her almost like an eerie ghost going across the prairie. Just the glow of her lantern. She'd wear the lantern on her hip with the horse running to, galloping to help people to go to this one, miles and miles across these trails. And the railroad would come through, the engineer and the brakeman and the railmen, and the people that worked, they would see her, especially, at night, the glow moving across the prairie. Quite dramatic. You can just walk here and you can just imagine it. What was it like? So I'm looking for petroglyphs, and I don't see any here. But I know there's some around this next corner here, because I'd hiked in from that way, which is where the cabin ruins are. So let's walk our way that way. I'm going to keep my eye open as we go. So this wash would flood many times, as the washes do here, Arizona, Nevada, this whole, you get these horrible floods. And I know there was a flood here, I think 2 years ago. I'm filming here, early February 2026. And there was a flood here, houses underwater, roads gone. Still an issue. And back then, they had the floods. And there was a big flood, I don't remember what year, but the train was not coming from the north. And Emeline knew that, so she warned the train from the south, which means probably the bridge was out. Come around the corner would be a disaster. So she saved, she would save the day. Oh, many times, just one of the stories. Let's look over here. I think there might be. Just want to check here. No, I don't see any there. Let's go around the corner, like I said. So she was quite a heroine. Yeah, you can just imagine back in the day, it's just so different than everywhere else here. Well, what I'm going to do is, I was just going to say, I'm going to turn the camera off as I'm stumbling around here and looking for petroglyphs and petrographs, and I see some here. So let's take a look. And there are 3 or 4 or 5 locations here where you can see, whoops, oh boy, gosh, you're set. Where you can see them. We have to go down this little area here. And I don't know how far back they date back. Yeah. Right here. Look like riders on horses and horned sheep, I don't know. Cattle? No, that looks like antelope, maybe. But yeah, those are old. Neat stuff, guys. Just think, imagine how that could be 100 years old, it could be 500 years old. We don't know. Looks like this area is fenced off. But again, this was the ranch, this whole area. Now, behind this massive rock is the ruins. So let's go see where the Huntsmans lived. Now, sadly, one of her sons, Frank. So Frank was a lineman here, which means a railroad section man. So he would watch for tracks that would, if the tracks were washed out or if there was a problem, just, making sure that if there were repairs needed, then he would be in charge. And it was like a section. I don't know how many miles, but this whole section was her son, Frank. So I think he didn't live here at the time, but he would come visit Mom, Emeline, often. And it's sad because he had lunch with her, and they had lunch together, not here. I think it was in town. It was Friday, July 30th, a place called Rocks. They were having lunch, and he returned. The storm came and didn't hear anything from Mom, so he decided to hike down here to the homestead to see if Mom was okay. And sadly, Frank found her dead. Yep. Right up here, you see the ruins. He found her dead right on the front yard. And at first they thought it was a murder. And the railroad men and all the people here would protect her from bandits and from the hobos and everybody. They all loved her and they watched out for her. So they did an investigation and they didn't find any signs of violence. And they determined it to be a pulmonary hemorrhage, her lungs. And just imagine the ground we're standing at, he probably found her right here. Right on the ground we're standing on. She passed away. Several days she was here by herself. So this is it. Look at the original beams. Probably. Good chance. Maybe not. The original fireplace. Look at that. Here's the stone lintel. The original stone lintel. Cracking. Look at that. It's got a crack. It's going to go at some point, but this is the original construction. Yeah, that's a good-sized fireplace. And so simple. It is probably, well, as I look at this, I'm going to say that's about 12 feet in this direction. And maybe 15. Maybe 15, so 12 by 15. Just think they all had, like, what was the layout in here? The bed, the kitchen, looks like there was a door here. Door going out, so there was a side door. I'm sure they had a food cache somewhere. I don't know. Let's look back here. There's still some things here. Look at that. You never know what you're going to find. Well, one thing I found is sticker bushes. Boy, they're brutal here. No damage, luckily. But look at that. Just as it was. Just as it was. The Lady of the Lantern. What a mysterious, interesting story. Well, she's buried at Overton Cemetery. We're going to stop by there on the way out. Pioneer Hill Cemetery in Overton. 65 when she passed. Let me get by the sticker guy. Here we go. Yeah, so we'll go see her grave. There's also a couple of 3 graves here somewhere. I'll see if I can find them, of mysterious, fenced-in mysterious graves, the wash graves they call them. I guess one might have been a renegade outlaw, or maybe a Mexican outlaw named Mouse. So there was a newspaper article on him. But yeah, here we stand. And so what I did is, there are photos of them all here. There's a photo of the full family, like right here. I'm going to try to get the angle. And what I'll try to do is superimpose somewhere here, the original image of them. I think it's about there. Another image we found, which is available. You can find it. That appears to have been taken back here. And I think they were the kids somewhere back in this area. Yeah. All right, with that, I will see if we can find these mystery graves. I don't see them anywhere. I drove up a ways, and then I hike way back in, so I haven't seen anything yet. So if I see them, I'll continue. Otherwise, this will be it, and I'll see you at the cemetery. Well, we did indeed find the graves. Here they are, not far from the cabin, just adjacent, right by the tracks. A fenced-in area. And yeah, it looks like 3 graves. One to the right here with the bush growing on it. Barely visible, just a few rocks. I don't see any markers. The one in the middle here, very well defined. Also a bush growing next to it. I don't see any markers here either. And we move here to the left. Definitely the 3rd grave here. Yeah, the 3 graves. And who are they? People are still trying to figure out who they were. Were they outlaws? Could one of these graves be the locally infamous Mouse, the renegade, the Mouse? We'll talk about him. Or are these simply the graves of railroad workers? Well, let's talk about the Mouse, Mouse the renegade, as we look at these graves. This valley right here was the site of a shootout with the infamous Mouse. He was a southern Paiute man who became legendary, a legendary outlaw here in the late 1890s. Also known as Little Mouse, he had been accused of murdering multiple people, including 2 prospectors. His hideout was not far from here, presently called Mouse's Tank in the Valley of the Fire State Park. Now there is still today a natural rock basin that collects rainwater, a perfect place to hide. It's a labyrinth of red sandstone. Couldn't find him. So he was able to evade the authorities for nearly 2 years hiding out there, but then they would find him. And we can trace the story from the Pioche record, the Pioche, Nevada, which published a detailed account on July 22nd, 1897. There was a posse, members of the Paiute tribe. They tracked and cornered the Mouse at a place called Cane Springs, which is in the vicinity of the Meadow Valley Wash. One member of the posse was said to be J.S. Huntsman, so a huntsman was there, but we checked the records and none of David or Emeline's children matched those initials, but David's brother was Joseph Smith from Gunlock, Joseph Smith Huntsman, so it was probably him. Could he have been visiting and participating in the search? Most likely. Well, after several days of searching, the posse found the Mouse near the Cane Springs, and several of the Paiute rode in advance, and they called out for the Mouse to give up, but he wasn't giving up. What did he shout back? "Shoot, son of a bitches!" And he started firing. There was an hour of gunfighting, and the Mouse was killed. He was going out with his boots on. You look back at the newspaper headlines from the Pioche record. A desperate Indian killed, Mouse the renegade. After a long hunt, he is cornered and prefers death to capture. Overton, Nevada, July 15th, 1897. Well, his remains were taken to Moapa, a town just south of here, for ID. And it was mainly to reassure the locals that they could see the Mouse for themselves, the face, his body, to know that the renegade was no longer a threat. But after that identification, there's no record of where his body was taken, where was he buried, or where was he thrown in the desert, or was he brought here? Could this be the grave of Mouse, one of these 3? Well, some say that the Mouse is not here, that these graves are 2 other unknown outlaws with a railroad worker, but the Nevada Historical Society says the graves are 3 railroad workers from Mexico, all unidentified. Railroad workers. Yes. Could it be? Could it be that these poor railroad workers were trying to seek the help from the Lady of the Lantern? Well, there is probably no doubt. No doubt. you.